get started. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Unfiltered. I'm your host, Chubbs McFarlane. Much appreciate that respect and the opportunity to learn from one another. Our stories are powerful. The pandemic like for us, I have focused on using my arts as a tool.
Because the opportunities are vast.
Always engage that right now. I'm your host, Chubbs McFarlane. Welcome to Unfiltered. Let's get started.
This is me.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Unfiltered. I'm your host, Chubbs McFarlane. Much appreciate that respect and the opportunity to learn from one another. Our stories are powerful. Look, a pandemic like this for us, I have focused on using my arts as a tool.
Because the opportunities are vast.
Always engage that right now. I'm your host, Chubbs McFarlane. Welcome to Unfiltered. Let's get started. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Unfiltered. I'm your host, Chubbs McFarlane. Much appreciate that respect and the opportunity to learn from one another. Our stories are powerful. Look, a pandemic like this for us, I have focused on using my arts as a tool.
Because the opportunities are vast.
Always engage that right now. I'm your host, Chubbs McFarlane. Welcome to Unfiltered. Let's get started. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Unfiltered. I'm your host, Chubbs McFarlane. Much appreciate that respect and the opportunity to learn from one another. Our stories are powerful. Look, a pandemic like this for us, I have focused on using my arts as a tool.
Because the opportunities are vast.
Always engage that right now. I'm your host, Chubbs McFarlane. Welcome to Unfiltered. Let's get started. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Unfiltered. I'm your host, Chubbs McFarlane. Much appreciate that respect and the opportunity to learn from one another. Our stories are powerful. Look, a pandemic like this for us, I have focused on using my arts as a tool.
Because the opportunities are vast.
Always engage that right now. I'm your host, Chubbs McFarlane. Welcome to Unfiltered. Let's get started.
Don't guess
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Unfiltered. I'm your host, Chubbs McFarlane. Much appreciate that respect and the opportunity to learn from one another. Our stories are powerful.
Are you ready?
Look, a pandemic like this for us, I have focused on using my arts as a tool.
Because the opportunities are vast.
Always engage that right now. I'm your host, Chubbs McFarlane. Welcome to Unfiltered. Let's get started.
Do you want to do this highlight?
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Unfiltered. I'm your host, Chubbs McFarlane. Much appreciate that respect and the opportunity to learn from one another. Our stories are powerful. Look, a pandemic like this for us, I have focused on using my arts as a tool.
Because the opportunities are vast.
Look, a pandemic like this for us, I have focused on using my arts as a tool.
Because the opportunities are vast.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Unfiltered.
Kaya, you can start.
Okay, awesome. Sorry. Hi, everyone. Happy Women's History Month. Tomorrow is International Women's Day. And, you know, this year for Women's History Month, the the theme this year is Women of the Vote, Refusing to be Silenced, which I think is an interesting theme, but I think that it doesn't necessarily apply, at least here in Canada. So I thought it would be interesting if we started off by maybe making our own themes or talking about what we think, the most pressing issues are for women in 2020 or 2021. Yeah. Does anyone?
I would say for women in 2021, especially with COVID and everything that hit, mothers in particularly just trying to work a 40-hour work week on top of being full-time mothers. So then COVID hits, daycares are closed, trying to figure out which way to work your regular life so that your kids aren't really affected or kind of get a sense of, well, there is no sense of being normal, but to an extent. So I think that was probably a big thing for 2021.
Yeah, I think the
For
pandemic
2020
has shifted a lot of these social movements, and I think it's really important to recognize its effect on women and young girls especially, and it's kind of helped us to re-examine.
A sense of, well, there is no sense of being normal, but to an extent,
we rely on
I think that was probably a big thing for 2021.
Does anyone have Oh, go ahead. Sorry. With someone speaking, I can't see everyone.
I know, same.
Yeah.
I'll jump in. I think another huge issue that I've been seeing posts about lately, and I love hearing people talking about, is women supporting women and boosting each other up, especially in this time, and this is an issue that's out there, women empowerment, but then we see we see a lot of some negativity and or some of those negative emotions come into play. And I think it's just super important for women to boost each other up, empower each other, support each other. And I think that's another a huge thing. So we can't ask for support from other people if we can't do it ourselves.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's a great point. I think especially, we have these really narrow ideas of what women's empowerment is, but at its core, it's really about, taking care of other women. And I think that really ties in with the pandemic theme. What would you say is for women who want to empower other women or strive to, support each other, what would you say are the best ways to do so? I know it's kind of difficult, especially it's confusing right now because we can't see each other face to face.
I'll jump in first to answer that question, and then someone else can pop in because it's been something that's on my mind. But I think one of the most simple and basic things that we can do is reach out and tell people the positive things we think about them. I've been trying to actively do that when either I hear someone saying something positive about somebody else. I love to share that information. I find myself thinking about people all the time and thinking about how amazing they are and all these great things they're doing. But I think it's a shame to keep all those things bottled up in my own mind. So why not spread it? Why not reach out and message someone, even if I haven't talked to them in 10 years or 5 years or never at all? Because there's many people that I may have never spoken to, but I see on social media and I'm like, wow, that's super cool what she's doing. I just recently went through a program in school and there was a lot of reflection. Of some of my courses were around leadership. And of course, I'm reflecting on past leaders and people that inspired me. And so many times I'm like, I should tell that person, I should write her an email if it was an old boss or reach out to them. Sometimes I didn't, but sometimes I'm trying to. I just think that in itself can go a long way. 2 examples that happened to me recently. I did that. I passed along a positive message that I got from someone else about somebody. And their response back was like, wow, I needed that. They were being hard on themselves about this specific topic. And just me saying I heard this person talking about how amazing you are. And it was like that I just thought, I'm just passing on this message, but it meant a lot to that person in that moment. So I think everybody could just let someone know when they're thinking about them or that they're important in their life.
Definitely. I feel the same way. I feel sometimes I even see things on social media and you get caught up in the just scrolling and then I'm like, wait, take a second and let's just give that person that compliment or a congratulations or something because it makes a difference. You don't realize a little bit of just congratulations on your engagement, for example, something like that. It just makes people happy, right? And it's good for women to support.
Yeah,
I have an
I think
experience.
it's.
Oh, you go ahead, Chloe.
No, you go ahead. That's all right.
I won't be long. Shannan, I've received a message like that from you, and it's so sweet and so awesome to hear from you. Shannan and I are old friends from childhood. So I recently shared a new career path on Instagram, and I got so many messages from people just congratulating me, and I can't tell you how wonderful it felt. And I think it's so important, especially, social media is kind of one of our biggest connectors to each other right now, and it's so easy to be able to send a quick message and tell someone you're thinking about them, or and it's a win-win for both people in that situation.
Yeah, and I've noticed too, along the same topic, and making space for women in whatever choices they're making, whether they're career driven, whether they're stay-at-home parents, whether they're dog moms, whether they're, whatever career and lifestyle that women are choosing. I'm noticing too more and more openness and like congratulations too on even those smaller things, welcoming all women into the room, even if your paths in life are super different, which is really exciting to see. And to see more of that would be, especially where we only connect right now online and over social media, continuing that path too, because we should all be welcome in the conversation, even if we've chosen a different path.
Well, just on the note of social media, I mean, how do we feel that social media has affected, International Women's Day or the way that women communicate with each other and with other people about women's issues? I know that there's, a positive side to social media, like Shannan was saying, where we can reach out to each other. And then there's a more negative side of social media and the effects that it can have on women's mental health.
I would definitely like to comment on that because I feel like more than ever in the last 5 years, even you see more about body positivity. And I think that's a big thing for young girls. For example, growing up when I did, you didn't see that kind of thing. So there was nobody as a model or anything standing there with a body that looks similar to yours. They were all kind of standard. So it's so refreshing to see that now. I mean, I'm in my 30s and I see it and I'm like the cheerleader, I'm like, yes, this is what we need. I want to see this, and more ads, Dove. And I was actually on Aerie website today and I see all these different body shapes, sizes, colors. And it's just like, yes, this is what we need. And that is a great thing. So I think social media, yes, it has the other side, like you're saying, but seeing this and all these different bodies and acceptance and love for being different and everything, it's so, so impactful. And it's so great to see.
Yeah, I think that, in my personal experience, it's been a lot easier to find, even just since I was a small child, to find more people that look like me, more people that have a body like me. And then, there's the other side of that where, we see all of these bodies that maybe have been altered or retouched. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing in any way, but they haven't been clear or transparent about that. And so it's really interesting to see how those two things play off of each other. And it's really, really interesting to see the way that we've been able to address those issues and be able to address the way that women interact with each other online. Does anyone have any thoughts on that? Or are we?
I think that just the access that we have to different stories is such an important part of social media. I kind of look at it more as an education tool now. And I've got myself in a really good algorithm and I'm getting served really good content from people who without social media, I wouldn't have access to kind of, just reading stories of from different perspectives as a part of my everyday. As I'm scrolling through, I'm not necessarily just connecting with people I know. I'm connecting with perspectives I never would have had access before to. And there's so many leaders and so many voices that I've been able to really get to know, especially in this last year. And I find it's becoming part of almost my subconscious now, and it's kind of changing me from the inside out, which I think has been really important.
Yeah, I feel very similar, Maeghan, around just access to information that I never would have, had my fingertips on before, and the perspectives and the learning. And I totally agree. I'm wondering, and that's also like the perspective of 3 women or 4 women. Sorry, Shannan, you're not on my screen. I just see over 25. So I'm curious to Kaya what the conversation's like, because I'm not a part of. I don't have very many friends who are younger than 20 even. So what that conversation is like for the crowd that's that is still so involved and influenced by media at that younger age, where they haven't, like, for me, I've created a positive attitude around social media for myself, for my mental health, and figured out a way to help myself while I'm in that environment. But it also comes from lots of experience. So I'm curious, Kaya, if you can touch on that too. I know you're the question asker, but as this conversation's going, I was thinking about you and was wondering if you could share that perspective.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, I figure this is like more of a just kind of like casual conversation. I'm not gonna like be too strict about interviewing. I'm happy to answer questions too. I think that what I've heard from a lot of my friends, who are mostly like younger women, the pandemic has really shifted their online experience. So especially for me, I noticed that while before my feed had been overwhelmingly positive, I've been really careful to construct my social media feed so that I'm seeing things that are, conducive to good mental health and body positivity. All of a sudden, because everyone's stuck at home, and it's a time where people are, they're at home, they're eating, they're maybe not getting out as much. All of a sudden, my feed at least got flooded with a lot of exercise videos, videos about how to edit your body, how to change the way you look. And so what I've heard, not just from my own personal experience, is that that's been really hard. And I don't think that that's something necessarily exclusive to women and young girls, but I think that a lot of those pieces of media are very targeted at young women. And I think that, for me, it's just been about like trying to get back to and looking to women who have more experience than me, who have lived longer than me, and looking at their strength and their beauty instead of trying to compare myself to something that doesn't exist. So I'm not sure if that quite answers the question, but yeah.
No, it definitely does.
Well, I think also, just to like kind of add on to what I just said, a lot of my like experience with women, being around strong women and girls who have, done it all before me and who are able to support me and who are able to encourage me, like we were talking about earlier. So for me, I think that that's really, really important, and I'm glad that we hit on that first thing. So I guess I'll just ask another question here to try and get things rolling again. So we talked about about stories and what stories we allow into our everyday lives through social media. And I guess a big question I have is, what kind of stories do we want to see about women? Personally, for me, I want to see stories where women are doing what they want, where they have control, over their lives. But I was curious. I thought I'd throw that out there because I know women's voices have often been silenced in the past. And so now that we get to really shape our own stories, it's a time for reflection.
Definitely. I love to see, I love personally stories about women that do the exact same thing like you just said, like just there's no limitations for them. And they don't feel like just because they're a girl or they're a woman or they're a wife or they're a mother, that puts a limitation on what they can do. So when you almost hear those stories of like they did this and they did this, they went to school after, you know, being out for so long and then opened a business or whatever they did and became successful or so happy with their lives and broke out of their shell. And you know, if they hadn't have done that, well, they wouldn't be where they're at. I love hearing those stories, those big success stories where they're saying, I can't believe 2 years ago, I even doubted myself. I didn't even try to do this. And now look at me. Look where I got to look where I got myself. I love hearing that.
Shannan, do you have anything you'd like to see in terms of stories about women or?
I think a lot of the same, like Larissa said, I think I love hearing people who just own themselves, whatever that may be, but they have no, with a lot of like humility and just pride in themselves and congratulate themselves and are just there. Something I'm still working on. I think we all continuously will work on it, but just not trying to change themselves for other people, just living their truth and not afraid to talk about it or to be, and also open to have those conversations. It's not just like, this is who I am and that's it. It is, this is who I am and that's it. But also if you don't understand or if you don't, you know, just open to feedback and conversations. I think conversations without getting, emotional or defensive or protective or something. Maybe they're not the best words to use, but just open to explore and have conversations and not hold anything against anyone. People aren't, I mean, you can't, people are always going to be ignorant until they learn. If they don't know, they don't know. So it's a time to educate and just be solid in that.
Feel no judgment.
Yeah.
No judgment for, you know, yeah.
Does anyone else have anything they want to add to that, or should we move on?
Yeah. I am. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. It's
Hi,
Uzo. Yeah. So one thing that I'm happy about is the fact that now people have a voice where otherwise they ordinarily wouldn't have, right? Because what we find in life is that people base their beliefs and attitudes on what they've experienced. And with social media now, there's so much that's out there. So people know that what they're experiencing in their own personal lives is not necessarily what the truth is about life, right? Take, for instance, a woman who's in an abusive relationship or an abusive marriage, that kind of thing. You get to a point where, I mean, I haven't experienced this, but I've seen people who've experienced this. And you see a very beautiful, bold woman who you feel is worth so much, but you realize that she doesn't even know that she's worth so much because she's been in a situation where someone has made her feel very little, and she believes that this is who she is. But now with social media, everything is out there, and you can actually see, even when she comes out, she sees how much value other people are placing on her, and so she realizes, oh no, so that's not who I was after all. I'm really not who this person has made me believe that I am, right? So social media is opening people's eyes and making people realize even more how much of a value that they are that they didn't know by themselves, you know. And I think people are really supportive on social media. Of course, you have, every now and then you have the trolls, you have people, the evil ones who come and throw dirty things at people. But a person who has no value, who suddenly comes on social media and sees other people appreciating what they're doing, can start to build their self-worth from there. Even if it's only one person, you know, when you're in a house and you're all the time you're faced with this one person telling you all these negative things about yourself, and then all of a sudden you're exposed to other people and people are appreciating you. You know, I've seen people evolve from there. I've personally seen people evolve from there. So that's one thing that I'm happy about. Social media is a game changer in so many different ways.
That's so well said. That was perfect. I totally agree with that. Like that whole thing. Absolutely.
I really feel very grateful for kind of the moment that I feel like we've been transitioning in the last few years into. It's kind of exactly what you were saying, Larissa. Women being able to just really embrace the life that they want. I feel like when we were introduced to kind of feminism, that idea, it was probably when I was in elementary school, and it was really based on a masculine view of things, of needing to be strong. Women can be strong and aggressive and, you know, ambitious and wonderful and want to hustle and grind, and that is amazing. And I think that there's another piece of that where women can want to connect and be fluid and be soft and rest. And that is just as valid and feels aligned and authentic with, you know, how many women feel. And that's kind of more my alignment. And I feel really grateful that that is being kind of celebrated and recognized now, that you know, there isn't just one mold that someone has to fit into. And
Right.
yeah, so grateful for that.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that too. It's not just a one mold. Like if you're out here grinding and you're working a full-time job and you're doing this on the side, but you know, I know a lot of women get in their heads about feeling guilty for taking that rest. It's so nice to see it is celebrated, especially just to take a rest or the self, quote unquote, like self-care, whatever that may be. That's okay too. You can still be out here working your butt off, but it's also okay to take a whole weekend and do nothing and not do your laundry for a couple days and take a rest and drink a cup of tea and read a book, whatever it is. And it is nice to see that too.
Absolutely. Just like the idea of balance, we're really reintroducing now, and I'm so here.
Yeah, I agree.
It cut out for me a little bit there, so I'm not really sure where we left off. But something that just really stood out to me is this experience womanhood, different ways that someone can embrace womanhood that aren't necessarily defined by either in comparison to masculinity and men, or, you know, masculine. And, you know, I think that that really ties into, you know, this idea of like 2021 surrounding, you know, race, health, economics, LGBTQ rights, all of those things, because we all have what our nationality is, you know, our economic status, of those things. And I wondered kind of, you know, how we feel the women's rights movement has really played into our lives. Interesting to see a space where I can see all of these different kinds of women. But, you know, yeah, I guess that's where I'll leave that.
I think we missed a little bit of what you were saying, Kaya. You were cutting in and out. But where did you leave off with which question?
Sorry, I think I'm having like a connection issue that I'm not quite sure how to fix. Great, let's see. Sorry, I'm just waiting for it to, basically I was just talking about like different ways, because I was just kind of summing up what we were talking about. It was really interesting, like different ways that we experience womanhood and kind of connecting that to various different movements over the past couple of years. And I just kind of thought that it would be interesting on a political level in the past 2 or so years. Do you catch any of that?
Sorry, Kaya.
I think we missed the punchline, just the end. You said it was interesting.
Okay. Just how like the feminist movement, or how, you know, discussions of women's rights have affected us over the past couple of years, kind of what, you know, I was curious about.
Yeah, I think like just on a basic level, it really helped me deal with my kind of like inner misogyny and my thoughts around what I didn't realize was not wrong thinking, but harmful thinking for myself. And it kind of touches into the balance that Maeghan was talking about around like you can still be a feminist and be sensitive and emotional, and you don't have to just be the grind and the strength, because to me, emotions are strong and boundaries are strong. And I think that one thing, especially during the pandemic, that has been, and I've noticed a lot of my female friends have pointed out, is the creating these boundaries in our lives that are helpful for ourselves, that previously would have been like, oh, you know, a comment or something, but those types of things were just, I don't know what the proper terminology is to use, but almost like just socialized into you that you have to participate, you have to be there, you have to go there. And it almost reflects more on the other person, their reaction to your boundary. And I think that part of these movements for me have been just realizing what are internal thoughts about myself that were just created by other people that I then was able to kind of come to and then be able to participate as a full person myself.
Yeah, absolutely. I really feel, even in the media that we're seeing lately. So I watched the Britney Spears documentary the other night, and the Paris Hilton one a few months ago. And there is misogyny is so embedded into our culture that it took so long for even us to notice, really. You know, we got so used to the interview questions that are asked of women. Of the expectations around kind of a romantic partner being the end be all and end all of a woman's life. And I am just so grateful that that is changing, and that exactly what you were saying, Chloe, that, you know, the last few years have given us an opportunity to examine our own thoughts and our own beliefs around how we see other women and how we see ourselves. And I think it's allowed us to just be more compassionate towards ourselves and to the journey of women, and how much emotional labor it takes to be a woman just trying to live. And yeah, I'm very happy that we are seeing the benefits of social media and how it's played into kind of, you know, it can be so intense and such an overload of information, but I really think that it kind of expedited a lot of wonderful things, and it really kind of, you know, kickstarted so many people being able to even start their own journey towards self-reflection and kind of examining their own beliefs and wondering where they came from, and just having the opportunity to change them for the better.
I love that. And I think also, sorry, Larissa.
No, go ahead, Shannan. No, go ahead.
I think that the great thing about social media and the internet and all of these online platforms that have been accelerating at rapid speed for years now, but especially in the past year because of COVID, I think about the international impact it can have and how we can connect with people from everywhere and see stories from everywhere, like that theme we were talking about before of stories. but just that access to real life stories, not published, not produced stories on TV or on commercials or on the internet somewhere, but personal people that are able to tell their story or speak their truth from many places. And I think that's pretty powerful also.
Larissa, were you going to add something or?
I actually was just pretty much what Maeghan was saying, was just seeing the stuff on Facebook where it kind of makes you go inside yourself and self-reflect. And, in the end, hopefully for myself, for example, it was a positive thing to see other people on social media that, for example, a couple years ago, I'd be hard on myself thinking, oh, I'm not married yet. Like, we grow up like we put this little girl to tell them, like, when you get married, your big white wedding. And, of course, growing up, that's like the dream thing, but it's also okay if that's not, by a certain time. And it's okay. It doesn't have to be at a certain time. So for myself, I struggled with that until, social media, especially on Facebook, I see these little memes come up and it's like, let's celebrate the woman who just got married, but let's also celebrate the woman who just started her new career, or, equally. So that kind of made me go inward and think, you know what, it is okay. Why is there a timeline? Why am I putting that pressure on myself? Why am I worrying about this? Am I happy with everything else that's going on? Of course. So let's focus on that and let's just let it happen. And there is no time stamp or time frame. It's when it happens, it happens. And if it does, it's great. So I think that helped me, and I'm sure it helped a lot of other women as well.
Yeah, I think that it's a really good point to make about relearning things, and that social media is a tool to do that. Setting boundaries, I know someone touched on that. Setting boundaries is a big one, but also just learning. But then part of it is looking at, whether it's like, how do we teach them or encourage them to grow into women who are able to create their own stories and their own paths for life. Something that's been really helpful for me is being able to see, see other women come out and say, oh, but I guess I just think that it's really important to acknowledge, and I really appreciate that we've kind of acknowledged not only relearning, but also what we are teaching to younger people. I think it cut out a couple times there. I'm not sure, but
a little bit, but I think I caught the gist of what we were saying. But I agree with you there too, because I think we aspire for these young girls to grow up with, like I said again, to get married. We're not aspiring them to be like competitors for like jobs or stuff like that, to go for more than just the big white wedding. Like, let's encourage them to go to university or do a trade so that they can do whatever they want with their life, for example.
Yeah, and even encourage, like, we've been talking a lot about positive, strong stories of, that we see on social media. But the other side of things that I've seen a lot lately are some hardships and stories about things that have been difficult, and feeling okay to share that side of things too, because life is hard. Being a woman is hard. But just life in general is not easy. It's not going to be, cupcakes and sunshines. And so like educating also, like, not just here's everything you can do in your life. You can have the wedding, or you can have the career, or you can have the kids, or you can have it all, but you can also have whatever you want. But also know that like there will be some hardships, and these are our stories around that as well. Like, and I'm, I don't know how I've seen those starting to creep up more and more and more. in really positive ways, although they're sad stories, you know. I don't know if I'm wording that correctly. Yeah.
I've seen that a lot too, and I think it's a good thing as well, because then that opens up again, like it opens up the conversation. You'll see someone's story, and then you'll go to that story maybe or comments, and you'll see all these women who can relate to that, who maybe have kept that in for so many years and have never spoke a word out of it about it, but see it on social media and feel like, oh, okay, that's I can relate to that. That's me as well, and you know, kind of relieve some of that pent up thoughts or emotions and help them in the long run.
Yeah, and I think that really ties back to, again, what we were talking about in the beginning, is being able to empower each other, being able to have these discussions with each other in a way that's supportive of each other. So I think.
And also, Njoh, I'm curious to hear from you also, because you're a mom of girls and talking about teaching and fostering that, all that is to be a woman. Like, where do you, what are your thoughts on that, on raising young women?
What I've always done is basically encourage my girls right from when they were young to, first of all, give their own thoughts weight, their own thoughts about themselves, and to not easily be swayed or influenced by other people's thoughts of them. Because there was a point in my childhood when that was a big issue for me. And what mattered the most was what other people thought and felt about me. And that really made me so miserable, because it got to a point where if I wanted to complain about something, I wouldn't. You know, it was always more important that the other person was happy with the situation and was happy with me. Until I realized that I had to speak up, or I'll always be taken advantage of, right? And once I realized that, it gave me power. And luckily for me, that happened when I was still quite young. And it turned me into sort of a Voltron, where I'm like the defender, so that I don't tolerate any sort of oppression, not for myself and not for anyone around me if I can see it. And I try to instill that in my girls right from when they were little, that you teach people how to treat you, right? And you decide what your worth and what your value is. Don't listen to anyone else, you know? And then I try to tell them, you are this, and this is who you are. And make sure that you don't pay attention to anything negative, anything that you don't want, right? So I think what's really most important is to instill self-worth in a growing child. And whatever you learn as a child, it's going to take you through life. You know, so the things that are happening to you today will be as a result of your mindset, your habitual mindset going through life, right? So it's important to catch kids young, you know, in how you want them to see themselves and to value themselves.
I love that. And I think a huge thing that you touched on again is, we can talk and talk and talk all we want and tell our little girls how they should be. And that means all little girls in our life, not our daughters, but our friends and our any children that are in our lives. We can tell them all these things that they should or could do. But I think the most important part is starting from within and showing them what we can do, because they're going to watch and they're going to observe, and you might tell them they should stand up for themselves, but if they witness you not standing up for yourself, then that's the stuff that sinks in. So I love that you talked about your own experience and how your evolution of that, and that is so powerful in itself. And again, something I'll always say, I'm working on everything, because I'm always working on evolving, because I don't think that stuff can ever, that work can ever be done or finished. But I love that. I think the best way to show young girls how to be empowered is to be empowered ourselves and set the example.
Yeah, maybe I should add that. You know, I personally believe in fairness in everything. So another thing that I also say is treat others the way you would like to be treated, right? So I know that, imagine now, if somebody's having, if you're having a problem, sometimes you don't know how to deal with it, but you know that you're going to be able to advise your friend if they're having a problem. You want to give them advice that places them in a place where the results are fair to them, right? And so I say this is the same way you should treat yourself. So if we instill a sense of justice in people, a sense of justice and fairness, treat other people the way you want to be treated. So that way, you will realize when something is happening to someone else, and you can step in and say, this shouldn't happen. So you should do the same thing for yourself, right? So I think a fair sense of fairness is great for everyone to have. That way you can treat yourself well as well.
I think, you know, that's such an important part and such an important philosophy, because I think traditionally, you know, the idea of kind of being a woman and a mother, I'm not a mother yet, but the idea of kind of spreading ourselves so thin in order to make everyone else happy, that was kind of glamorized and romanticized for so long. And kind of the idea of being a martyr and kind of driving yourself into the ground. So the idea of raising our girls with a sense of fairness for themselves and a sense of, you know, you wouldn't want anyone else to be treated this way. So why would you treat yourself this way or allow yourself to be treated that way? I think it's so important.
Exactly. Yeah. My mom, my late mom, God bless her soul, I used to say to her, because she was that kind of woman, and I would say to her, you are not God. So you should quit trying to be God. And I'm like, do you realize you're someone else's child? You know, so now I say to my kids, when it's getting too much, I'm like, no, I'm shut down. I am someone else's child too, so I need to be taken care of. I can only do so much, right? I cannot be your God. I cannot be everyone's. I cannot be everything for everyone. I can only do so much. And I think that's how life is. At work, at play with friends, this is what I try. Like, I can only do so much, you know. So don't expect too much from me. I'm not a superhuman. So
Exactly.
hope we all take this in.
Yeah. I think sometimes we can know things like rationally. You know, I know that. I know I can't do everything, but in the moment, I have to remind myself. I have to check back in and be like, okay, I really can't do everything. And like Chloe, what you were saying about boundaries, that's the whole, you know, point, is to protect your own energy, to be able to pour yourself into things that actually are aligned with you and that can fill you back up.
And I think it's also important to fill your own glass each day before you fill anybody else's. I heard this about a year ago. Someone I seen on the internet, and it really hit home, because it's like, it's true. Every day, even if it's just a small thing to fill your glass to make your day that much better before you have to fill anyone else's glass, is something to keep in your mind, so you don't get to the point of, you know, burnout.
And you feel good.
Yeah, you feel good. You do, and your day is much better. Because if I compare my days to when I do fill my glass first to the ones where, you know, I just might not, they're much better days with the ones I do fill my glass first.
Well, I wondered maybe if we could talk a little bit more about that and about setting boundaries and what that looks like. You know, like what those actions actually look like. I know it can be really confusing. So like, I'm sure, you know, I think it's fairly apparent that it's something that I struggle with, is trying to make myself more appealing to other people through my language.
Oh dear.
I'm clear for others. Did I phrase it?
I missed a lot of that.
Just the very last part, Kaya. What was the very last thing that you said?
Oh man, I'm sorry.
Okay, we caught most of it, but
I was just gonna say that I was wondering if there, you know, because again, it's confusing. or can take to set those boundaries clearly, and to break those habits.
I think I can hop in here. I think, Kai, I got the gist of what you were saying. Boundary setting is something I really, really have to work at. And it's something that doesn't come naturally to me. But I heard from my girl, Brene Brown, that sometimes you have to have an 8-second hard conversation. And it's going to, you have to say no in the moment and, kind of set a boundary, and it's going to make your life so much easier on the other side of it. Because I know myself, I'm used to kind of like maybe giving a wish-washy answer on something or something like that. And then I'll dread it and I'll get so anxious about it. And it sucks my energy out of me. And so I just think, okay, I just need to have a 10-second burst of courage here to kind of set a boundary. And it might feel like I want to crawl out of my skin, but it's going to help me in the long run. So trust me, I don't get it right every time, but I just try to think it's just 10 seconds. It's just 10 seconds. And
I love that.
Okay.
Yeah,
if I can
good.
jump in here, can you hear me?
Yep.
I say that saying no is something that I do very well. And I'll tell you why. I find that when people say, I prefer people to say no to me than to not be sure if they want to do it or not, because that makes it difficult for me to now know what to do next, right? So sometimes you're actually doing someone a favor if you let them know straight up that this isn't going to work. So that way they can move on to the next alternative. So you can look at it as you're actually doing them a favor because you're letting them know ahead of time that they can explore other options, because I don't like to be in a place where I'm not sure. So because it means that I have to rearrange whatever I'm planning and still I'm not sure what's going to be the outcome. So when I get there, it's going to now be frustrating if I still don't know, or if I'm getting a sense of maybe they don't really want to do this, and then I don't really know where I stand. So then I don't know if it's, could it possibly be a cultural thing? No, I don't think. I think it's a personal thing. Or maybe it's just my person. Maybe it's easier if I know this is red and this is white, And I think it's easier for everyone if they know exactly what they're going to get. Like if you're going to open this cookie jar, you know what kind of cookies you're going to get. You know the type that you like or not. So I think we can look at it as, let me do them a favor so that they know exactly where they stand and what they can do to help themselves in their situation.
That is such a great point. I mean, so for me with boundaries, I caught myself in an awful trend of being the I'm not sure, or the I think I could, or I think I can, I might have time for that. And then either getting, like Megan says, super anxious about it, or not giving my 100%, or and it was just an awful little trend. And I never once thought of that was inconvenient, or I thought afterwards that was inconvenient for the other person. And had I just said, no, I can't make time for that, or I don't have time for that, the other person would have known immediately that I couldn't participate or couldn't do this or wouldn't give them 100%. So it's something that I'm not perfect at, but I've been working on, and I'm going to steal your tip of 10 seconds because that's fantastic.
Yeah, that's great.
And then hopefully build my comfort level around it, because I want to be able to be that person, but I know I don't have the energy for it all the time. So I really like that perspective, and I'm going to think about the other people more too. But boundaries, and I think the question was, what do they look like? And for me, lately it's just been, no, I don't have time for that. And I'm trying not to give too many excuses or reasons, because it just will bombard and exhaust the reason why I'm saying no. Because really the only reason why I'm saying no is I just don't have the energy for that, or the time for something else at the moment. So trying to limit my excuses, because they're not excuses, because calling it an excuse to me makes it sound like I'm doing something wrong almost, because it is just, it's a self-care, it's something just for me, and the other person can continue on and find someone else.
I love that. It's so true. They're reasons, they're not excuses. But when we put that word excuse, then we think that we attach that negative or that falsity to it. But I think for me, where I'm at with boundaries, and it's the theme has already been touched on, is trying to set them. And then I instantly, like, I get that 8 seconds of brave maybe, and I do it. And then I go back and I'm like, well, because then I feel bad. And then I feel bad that I set that boundary and I'm backtracking and then unsetting the boundary. And what Uzo talked about before, and doing that fairness and that respect to ourselves is important. So I need to start respecting my own boundaries. And then to add off what Chloe mentioned is that I don't need to have the reasons, or I have my own reasons, but I don't have to share them or reveal them. And then it's okay to not do things. But it's work. It's hard work. But again, so is doing something that you're not into or you don't have the time for. Both of them are hard. So it's choose your hard.
And it's draining. It's draining to do something that you really don't even want to be doing. And you say yes because you feel bad, and then you're doing it and you're drained and you're beating yourself up as to why you said yes.
Right.
And it can't even give you 100%.
It's right. Exactly. You won't. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I like that. Choose your hard.
Oh, I don't know. I think I might have cut someone off there. But what I was gonna say is that that's like all of that information is really, really, it's really nice to hear. I mean, I found it really nice to hear because, you know, it's acknowledging, first of all, that like we have to respect ourselves. And how hard we've made it for women to make those choices for themselves and to find their own boundaries. What I wonder about is, you know, we've talked a little bit about what women can do for each other and for as women, or, you know, what do we need from them in terms of creating spaces so that we can do all of these wonderful things that we talked about. Did it cut out again? Oh man. Okay. So yeah, I don't know.
Were we going to talk about, were you asking how we can create those spaces?
I was going to ask how we, you know, what we can ask of people who do is half of the work. We also have to work on, you know, the other half, which is what do we as a society and what do people who aren't women, how do they contribute? Okay, it did it cut out again. I need to fix my internet probably. Basically what I was asking is people who aren't women.
Oh no.
I think maybe what do we need from people who aren't women to create all of these wonderful things that we've been talking about?
Yeah.
This is a very complex question, I have to say.
I would say we need if that's the question, which I'm assuming so. I think what we need from other people in society is just support to be open and not be judged. I think a lot of women, you know, if you're not Sometimes they feel like there's a cookie cutter type of woman on, social media, and they try to fit that cookie cutter, but they're not. And, it's okay to be not. And I think people just need to be more accepting. And for the most part, I see that people are, but just more accepting of women and how they're different and they're not the standard, and celebrating their differences and their accomplishments that may be different from what the norm is.
Yeah, agreed. And being open to join the conversation. Like,
yes,
it would be fantastic to have an open, judgment-free conversation that goes beyond what I'm going to use the word stereotypes, so we can let the rest of the world know that women are all of this plethora of wonderful things.
I think there's a bit to be said around, maybe challenging people to do more than the bare minimum, I guess. So kind of like doing some education themselves and putting an effort and kind of intention behind recognizing that there is work to be done in this space, and not putting it all on women. We've seen that conversation come up a lot this year, specifically around race and how much labor it takes to also have this lived experience, and then also have to educate others. And kind of there's so much labor that is involved in that. And I think that, it's really promising to see many of the men in my life, kind of try to dig in a little bit on this and to listen to women and to listen to our unique experiences, and just in their own lives, just trying to make small little changes, but to be intentional about it, and I think that it's okay that we ask for a little bit more than just the bare minimum.
Yeah, I agree there. I actually shared a video yesterday on my social media that was just, it was one of those things that was just like mind blowing. It put things into perspective, and I actually wrote her name down because I wanted to reference it. It was Gilda Coldo Hunter, and she was a state representative, and she was speaking to another state representative about another state representative who happened to be a male, and how he was blown away at the fact that the government is going to enforce people to wear a face mask. And she's saying, I must have heard this wrong, because if you're being upset about mandating face masks to the people, but don't see anything wrong with telling women what they can do with their bodies. It was just like, wow, that is the bare minimum. You're really upset that they're going to be forced to wear a face mask, but we're not upset that you're going to force women to do what you want to do with their body. So that to me is something that can be men can, for example, I don't want to be like the men, but men can really think of put that into perspective. You're upset if you have to wear a face mask. Well, what if you were a woman and you have no choice in what you're doing with your body? So I think that, and I do see a lot of men that, completely support that movement, which is fantastic, but there could be more.
Another thing to add as well is we talked a lot about young women and teaching girls at a young age. And I think it's equally as important to teach those young boys, have them included in different things. Something actually I spoke to Chloe about recently, just even about the idea has been on my mind for a while about babysitters. And babysitters seem to be always teenage girls. Why don't we have boys that are babysitting and providing childcare? It's very common for a young boy to want to make some money, and we say, go shovel driveways or mow lawns. So why are we sending them to do yard work and not saying, oh, I have a friend you could babysit? I've been thinking about it a lot because my son is is getting older, and he talks about babysitting all the time, especially like family and my nieces and stuff. But I just think it, like him talking about babysitting, and then all of a sudden I'm like, wait, what? That's so funny that I don't know any young boys. And I'm not saying they're not out there. Absolutely, I don't know everyone, but I don't know of any young boys who babysit. Or people always say I have a friend who has teenage girls, and then that's just one small example, but something that we're setting them up at a young age, and thinking of sending the boys out to do yard work for money and sending girls out to babysit for money. And that's what they're
Absolutely.
learning from early on, and just that one little small example. But teaching our
Yeah,
young boys is so important.
yeah. Even house
Yeah.
chores.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah.
help dad with, like, boys, yeah, help, do these things, help with the garbage or all of these things. But yeah, teaching them how to cook and teaching them how to care for people.
Yeah. A friend of mine posted something the other day. It was a man who was taking instructions from his wife on how to cook, and she said put 2 glasses of rice and a glass of water, and he actually had the glasses in the pot. So I was like, no, it depends on the kind of men you're hanging out with. Because yeah, everyone should be able to do all these things so that like if the woman is tired in the home, she shouldn't always be the one expected to put the food on the table, right?
Mhm.
Everyone should. Yeah.
Everyone can do it. And I think it's really taught from a young, I mean, it's taught right from birth of, what women do and what men do. And I think it's, important that we try to teach different, that we try to say it's not just gender of who cooks and who cleans and who fixes the car and who mows the lawn. It's
Yeah.
whoever wants to and is capable of. And I think it's important, like you're saying, Shannon, to teach our boys those things. For example, I'm sewing all the time. I have a little shop in my basement. My son will sit there with me sometime. Now he's 3, so I'm not going to let him use the sewing machine quite yet. But, it's not something I'm like, oh no, that's not something boys simply know. I want him to learn, and I hope he can sew 10 times better than me someday. But I think it's important that we break that, standard, or I'm sorry, I'm trying to think of the word I'm using here, but that it's not just about the gender of what role, what task you're doing, that you can do all of these different things. And I
Yeah.
think it's time, because it's such an instilled thing. I mean, if you think back as far as forever, this is what it's been like. Women are expected to raise the kids, clean, cook, do everything else, manage everything. And that's the way it is still to this day for the most part. And then you see women getting mentally exhausted because they're doing all of these things. And the men are just, it's just not norm for them to be doing these things.
There was a
Yeah.
reason why it was like that. Sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, there was a reason why it was like that. It was the right thing, because in those days the men would have to go out to hunt to bring the food home, right? And the women would stay home and take care of the kids and take care of the home front, because he can't be out there hunting and cleaning the home, right? But now things are different, and both of them are going out to work, so you're both going out there and working, and then you both come home and the home is there for everyone, so you should be able to share everything. But if it's something that
Right.
takes physical strength, like lifting heavy objects and all that, naturally he should do it because he's stronger, he's built stronger. But anything else that doesn't require you to have any kind of extra strength, we should be able to share all these things, because now everyone is working and contributing.
You're so
Yeah,
right. There are definitely biological differences, and we should always continue to acknowledge that, because, and of course, there's always going to be exceptions. But so I think it is great to say that same thing. Like, maybe young girls are, they mature faster. We know that from science, that different things happen differently. So maybe those young teenage boys maybe just aren't there mentally to be responsible or something. But I think it's just also great to open up that space, that it's a possibility, and that giving them options, and for sure, because there's going to be boys that are very nurturing, and there's going to be girls that are super strong, and boys that aren't very strong, and girls that aren't very nurturing. So I think just always having that possibility and options, and presenting that, no matter what we may like already believe about those children and those boys. Chloe, sorry, you were going to say something too.
No, yeah, I was just and just to touch on what you said first, like we've been talking about, is about creating that space for girls and women to be both strong and sensitive and fierce and emotional, offering that same you know thing to our little boys, to be able to then experience all those emotions as well, like just back down to that internal level. But what I was going to say was, I found this article at my grandmother's house recently, and it was from, I want to say it was the 70s or 60s. It was pretty old, and she had saved it. And essentially the title in the article was, men are saving $738 a month with a housewife. So essentially it breaks down the cost that a married man would have to pay $700 or $700 a month or something like that. And essentially broke down the costs of if he had to pay out for all of these services, a cleaning service, a cooking service, childcare service, a transport service, all of those things. And it broke down all those costs and said, essentially, this is what men are saving. And it really sparks an interesting conversation around. So this article came out, and it was really on the side of like valuing the hard work women put into it. But it's funny, or not funny, haha, but interesting how the conversation has been more in the narrative of women are just at home. But really, if you put a numeric value to it, which we do with jobs, a job has a numeric value to it. You don't do it without a paycheck. It would be pretty interesting to like look at it from a different lens, and then have that conversation just on an income piece, because I think part of this conversation has to look at female-led jobs are typically lower paid jobs or have different vacation or different part-time or full-time qualifications. And I say female-led jobs that, just that is how we've navigated currently in our society. So the job itself is allowing this kind of misogynistic view of like women must, be the one to take the kid to the doctor's appointment or be the one that's home at 3 o'clock to get them off the bus. So we haven't opened up that pathway for, let's say, even, and I don't want to use the word corporate, but a different job avenue to be able to kind of, you almost have to choose that avenue, and these are just thoughts I've had recently around just like, we almost have to have like a full conversation, not just at home, but bring it into the employment field and into how we've socialized what that means. And please jump in.
Yes, no, I couldn't agree with you more. Up until October, I had worked 10 years in healthcare, and I decided to leave because a multitude of things. But one of the things was I realized I wasn't seeing my son at all, and I'm a full-time mom, and I'm working 40 hours a week. And my job just was not very flexible with as far as time off. He was sick in October as well, so I did need some time off for him. And at first it was like undoable until I really had to further my conversation with my employer to say, like, this is a serious matter. I kind of have no choice. So can you please give me this time off? And it was accepted and whatnot. But aside from my personal story, it's not just like that for myself. There's lots of women out there who cannot get time off or are forced to stay to work, and they have no childcare because they're not the only one at home. And I haven't seen any employment yet that really can help out with that. And I think it is a conversation that needs to be opened up because I have yet to see it. And maybe I have just yet to see it. Maybe it is out there and I'm missing something or haven't heard of it yet, but it's definitely not a normal thing. There's no working with, a mother or a full-time parent in a job. There's nothing that accommodates that whatsoever.
Well, if I can just jump in there, I mean, I don't have children. So I can't, speak to that. But something I've noticed is the way that, I as a young woman with no children, have been able to notice the difference in the way that we treat what is work for women and what is just expected of women. Or, the other partner is babysitting the kids today, which kind of implies that it's an expected role for women. So on top of working, having a full-time job, then you come home and it's more work instead of having shared responsibilities. And then another thing I just wanted to comment on quickly, I just want to make sure that when we're talking about to all different types of women. So, you know, it's a little bit tricky sometimes, I think, when we talk about like biological, when we try and bring biology into it, especially because, you know, femininity in its own right is kind of a social construct. It's something that we've created. And so just making sure that we like keep the space open to, you know, all different types of women, trans women, you know, women who have different, you know, hormone levels and physiology and stuff like that. And I just want to make sure that that's I think it might have.
We lost you a little bit, Kaya, but I think the point that you were making was just kind of like the binary that we've traditionally thought has been kind of set in stone and completely biologically true. You know, we're learning that it's not as simple as that. And I appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah, I just, no, and I think also, you know, we touched a little bit more on like economic issues, all of these things that we're struggling with. We're starting to see economic issues with race and stuff like that. We're starting to see how the way that we treat women is involved in all of these processes. So again, economics during the pandemic, a lot of people are struggling economically. And so looking at, you know, the difference in that struggle between men and women in general, really interesting. So I just appreciate that conversation. I don't know, does anyone else have anything they'd like to add? Because I feel like I'm cutting out quite a bit. Okay.
I'm not sure if there was a cutout or not, so I was just waiting.
Yeah, I can't tell when I'm like cutting in and out. So I'm trying to kind of let you guys lead the conversation a little bit more. Yeah, I just asked if anyone had anything they wanted to add or. No, okay. Like redefining the way that we look at women, and education is a really big tool. We talked about that with social media and stuff like that. Do you think there's more we could be doing within schools? I know some people have like childcare backgrounds too, so.
Kaya, was your question around what we can be doing more in kind of like the education system?
Yeah, that was yeah.
Yeah, I really have this dream of kind of having a whole class. I don't know if we all had this experience, but we had like a leadership class in high school where it was kind of, you know, leadership skills, you know, like kind of like life skills, kind of a mix of everything. But I just have a dream, and I've heard, you know, other kind of leaders talk about this, of having some type of course on boundaries and self-esteem. And, you know, this really isn't specific to women. I think it's something that could benefit all of us. But, you know, bringing more of kind of like a real, a way for women to kind of build their confidence early on, and kind of like a structured classroom setting, and to learn about different parts of kind of, oh, I can set a boundary, you know, this is how you do it when you're young, and this is how this is gonna, you know, help me for the rest of my life. Because I think, you know, parents are doing an amazing job, but there's different resources available to parents. Like, I think it's kind of it's a community responsibility that we should be teaching these core really life skills that I think will particularly impact women, but also help kind of raise everybody up.
think that's a really good point. Just again, how, addressing a lot of these issues within, the realm of how we treat women can also be a benefit to everyone.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh, sorry. I don't know if I cut you off there, or
no, you didn't. I was just saying I agree. Like, I agree with what Maeghan says. I think it's a thing that should be a course in school taught for how to set boundaries, how to, believe in yourself and have self-esteem, and also courses for just basic life skills. And that's, again, not just for women. I think for both sexes to learn those things, because I think kids, especially at a junior high to high school level, are very impressionable, and showing them these type of life skills are really going to help them cope hitting adulthood and getting out there on their own, instead of kind of just leaving high school, going to college, or taking a trade or something and just sitting there. Okay, well, what's next? You know what I mean? Or as far as how to take care of themselves and live out in the real world on their own without their parents.
And just to add, Kaya, again, I love the fact that, or the note that you just brought up about all genders. And I know it's something that I think being intentional about how we speak and the language we use, the ideas we're teaching, and recognizing when we make mistakes and when we're saying things, instead of just trying to blow past it or shove it under the rug, if you will, saying, whoops, sorry, let me rephrase, or if you think about it at the moment, or go back and say something differently. We talked a lot today about men and women in their roles, but you're right, all genders, not just men and women, but anyone who identifies as different genders, and we all experience things differently. But I think being intentional and being okay with having said or done something wrong, but actively changing it or correcting it when we can. And I think that can start right from the school systems and being intentional, or anyone that's working with children, being intentional about how you're saying things, what you're saying, and that you're using inclusive and open language.
I think that's like a really good point. I think we've done a lot of work recently in trying to call things out when we see them, which is really important work, but then also thinking about what we do next, and where we go further, especially on the other side of that, when you're the person who's been called out or asked to change some sort of behavior. How do we move forward together and address that? And I think that that's one of the questions, I guess, that kind of ties in with the education piece and all of it we've been talking about, is how do we touched on this at the beginning, but I think it's like a kind of nice way to sum up the conversation is, what are we hoping to see?
I don't know if she paused there on what are we hoping to see moving forward, but I'll just I can get started. I wanted to tag this in at some point, but I was texting Shannan about, and here's a compliment for Kaya, and just how intelligent Kaya is. And then we were both chatting about how this younger, and I don't want to say generation, but this younger group of youth are just getting so much education at such a young age that we just didn't know, or I didn't know, and I've been learning about in my 20s and as I'm getting older. And so I think continuing the education as adults is just as important as giving that education to our young youth and children. So seeing kind of a great, continuing variety in opening that space for everybody, both young and getting older, who we just missed it. It wasn't as part of our education or our media kind of it wasn't in my social media when I was in grade, 11. But it is now. And so I'm taking that time to learn and make sure I do better. And so seeing that for everybody would be great. And also, this has been a great conversation. Thanks, guys, ladies.
Yes, it's been so good.
Totally. I think, yeah, what I would like to see is really, it is based around conversation.
That you all made a lot of really like important and powerful points. I learned a lot. So thank you guys so much. And again, happy Women's History Month.
Me too. Thank you so much, everyone.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank
Been
you.
good.
Maeghan, did you want to finish you were saying something there? Oh,
you know what? I think we wrapped up just at the right time.
I think we're gone. Okay.
Oh, I can't tell if I cut someone off.
Kaya, no worries at all. I was just kind of going to reiterate a lot of what you were saying, so it worked out perfectly.
Okay.
I don't know about you, but this was my first podcast experience.
Mine too.
Very exciting for me.
It was a highlight of my week for sure. Highlight of almost my year, I think.
Yeah, dude. Shannan, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for the invite.
So
yes, thank you. I'm happy to do it anytime. I love anything that has to do with women and, positive stuff. But
and also joining in on with one of my favorite women, which is Shannan. And I know she texted me a compliment the other day and I just went right past it, which is my own like internal struggle. And I just can't say enough about Shannan. And I know we're off the air, but I met her at university and she already had a kid and she was pregnant with the second and she had better grades than I did. And she just is so smart and so powerful and so wonderful. So I wanted to make sure I threw a little thank you for the compliment out and back at you, girl. I love you.
Oh, Chloe, thanks. I also am learning at accepting compliments. So I'm just going to say thank you so much. Yeah.
All right. Have a great night, everybody. And
thank you so much, ladies. And we're going to try to get you on other issues. Great, powerful conversation.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thanks for
Bye,
having
guys.
me.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Have a great week ahead, everyone.
Yeah,
Yes, you as well.
Yeah, you too.
Bye.
Bye.